Hello there, and welcome to the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast. I'm so glad you're joining me here today. As you've likely guessed by now, my name is Denise Alvarez, and I get to host you here each week. And before we jump into today's episode, I will briefly introduce myself just in case for new friends, and then we'll jump in. As I said, my name is Denise, and through my business, Storm Lily Marketing, I get to help dream-chasing horse business owners to see clearly through the marketing overwhelm so you can create a cohesive plan for your social media, website, and email marketing that will turn your online audience into your customers. Now, I do that through one-on-one coaching as well as website design and website copywriting, and then education that is typically offered online, and then here, of course, on this podcast. I do each of these things, you guys, because my heart truly is to help you as a horse business owner be out in the barn or the arena, behind the camera lens, even if it's at the computer, whatever it is that you are doing in the equestrian world. I want to help you do more of that, and I truly believe that getting clear on your messaging and marketing is going to help you do that. And so here on the podcast, you will get a mix of step-by-step strategies, essential how-tos, and entrepreneurial mindset shifts that will help you not only see what's possible for your business, but I'm also here to guide you through that process so you can make it happen. Now, here today on the podcast, I have a new guest to introduce you to. But before we dive into that, let me give you a little bit of the why behind our conversation. Now, I'm sure that you have heard this before, but ironically, at this time in 2024, we are the most connected we've ever been in the world, and yet we're disconnected. Here's what I mean by that. We are hyper connected in the virtual world. We have social media. People are on their phones connected, right? Have the ability to connect virtually all the time. Yet, so many people feel disconnected. Now, a recent Forbes article that I read said it this way. The internet, mobile phones, and video games have opened a multiverse of new connections and opportunities. Yet, digital interactions have failed to replace the need to connect on an emotional level in the physical world. Now, why are we talking about that here on a podcast about marketing? It's because you as a business owner, you need connection. Your customers are craving connection, whether they acknowledge it or not, and whether you have acknowledged it or not. It's an innate need that we have. And here's the reality. As a business owner, I want you to be successful, and success does not happen in a silo. And so connections do matter. And while you will hear me on this podcast talk about making connections through social media and through email marketing, the point is we need those connections. And connection is a very big part of marketing successfully. And so today's guest is actually very passionate about this exact idea. She is going to teach you how to build meaningful connections that will help you to thrive as an equestrian entrepreneur. Jodi is an entrepreneur herself, so she gets it, and she's a horse person, so she gets that as well. And as you will see, she has a gift for communicating. Her heart is really to help young women to gain clarity, confidence, and connections in the equine and ag industry, specifically as they're building their careers in more, oftentimes, a corporate setting, not always, or maybe an agricultural setting that may not be corporate. But she's an entrepreneur, so she gets what you all are doing. And so she is here to help you learn how you can make connections as an equestrian entrepreneur in a world that, frankly, is very disconnected. So get ready for this conversation. I think you're going to love Jodi. And as always, I'm going to encourage you to not just take notes, but to listen for that one thing that you can take and begin to implement in your business starting today. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Jodi Lynch. Okay, Jodi, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. I'm so grateful. Thank you for this gift of time.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Denise. This is fantastic. Connections are a big deal to me. And so it's just one of those. You and I have never met in person, and here we are,
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about this conversation. So before we dive into like you said, the connections, the things we're really going to talk about actually is connecting. I would love first for my audience to get to know a little bit about you and your background. I know that that can be a really big question. So feel free to just give us some of the highlights of really what has led you to this point of being a coach and a speaker. Specifically, I know your heart is to help young women to really thrive in the equine and ag industries. So tell us kind of how you landed at that place.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head, Denise, and I'll try and do this maybe in under a minute. We'll see if I can accomplish that. But I always like to start, for me, the beginning was high school FFA. Denise, it was just so impactful. It ignited, it fueled the fire in me for this animal health industry. And I'd grown up, kind of that crazy horse girl that never grew out of being a crazy horse girl. So off I went to Western Kentucky University from Maryland, where I milked cows in the morning and I rode on the equestrian team at night and competed in the IHSA. And then I also moved ahead, as well as those two responsibilities, in addition to a few academics, of course. I also went to work for a local feed store. So that's where the industry career really started for me. And then I have gone on now to spend the majority of the last 20 years with Purina Feed and Zoetis, which is pharmaceutical side of the animal health industry. So I've been in feed and pharma, as I say. And through that entire career trajectory, I just continued not only to excel in sales, which comes fairly natural to me because that's relationship based as much as anything. And I love speaking horse, as we say, and being in animal health. But I really continued to lean towards coaching, inspiring, empowering. It came natural to me to help my customers with their teams, right? Step in, do some training with their teams. And then younger people on my own team. Okay, Jodi, will you help us with onboarding, new hire training, mentorship, those kinds of things? And as I will always say, I'm pretty firm, but I'm super fair. And I also like to have a lot of fun. So firm, fair, and fun. That's kind of led me forward through my career. And then about a year and a half ago, I said, this is just what I want to do. I stepped away from my corporate sales career. And so now I focus on speaking and training, especially groups and individuals that are involved in the animal health industry. And yes, my passion is young women who want to pursue careers in animal health.
I love that. And one thing that I will put in there, and I'll, of course, ask you more questions about how people connect with you at the end, but is you also have a podcast that's specifically for that audience, for the Thriving Equestrian Professional. Am I getting that right?
Yes, the Thriving Equine Professional. You got it.
That's right.
And it really is to highlight all these careers. And I'm quick to say we don't know what we don't know, especially when we are in that student to professional transition. So my goal and objective with the Thriving Equine Professional, Denise, is just that, highlighting all these cool careers all over the industry. But also, as I highlight the careers, we're telling the story of that guest. And it is so, especially our younger listeners and even those that are looking at career transitions, are able to hear that it's never a straight line. I didn't graduate college and say, I want to be a sales professional in animal health. No, you just try and find your way for most of these careers. And for many of us, you don't even know the careers out here and what they are. So the opportunities are so much more vast than we realize.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so, so true. Well, I know that one of the things that you really have excelled at and that you're passionate about is this idea of making intentional connections in a world that frankly is disconnected. Interestingly enough, right? Like I don't have the stats to pull out, but when they talk about the number of hours people spend on their phone on a social app, and then turn around and fill out a questionnaire that says they feel lonely and disconnected, right? So it is a very disconnected world in many ways. But tell me about why that's so important to you.
I think, and you are exactly right, we are in a very technologically connected world and a humanly disconnected world. And so there's so many factors that go into that. And yes, I believe that we are at a point where, especially if we are to acknowledge the four generations that make up today's workplace, that we really can acknowledge that connections used to just happen. So if you think about like my evolution in feed sales, you know what happens at the feed counter of a feed retailer? Coffee. Mornings, conversations, advice, like that used to happen and it just doesn't happen anymore. Part of that is we're moving too fast. We've allowed our culture to hustle us into, this frenzy, and we are hesitant to just own our time and take a breath. I believe in things like creativity and boredom. There's been a trend going around this year about a 90s kid summer. And I'm like, yes, I think that's yes, turn the devices off, get
Yeah.
outside, 80s kid right here. So 80s kid summer, 90s kid summer. We have suffered through what I call the great disconnection of the last decade. And that's probably being conservative. I will call it the battle between the millennials and the boomers. And we're really putting that to bed. Gen Z is taking over. Gen Z will be the majority of the workplace in the next couple of years, and they're bringing a little bit different vibe to us, and they're saying connections are important. And so we're seeing that we're fighting for, hey, what are we missing? Why aren't we feeling fulfilled and empowered? And how do we do that? And so honestly, it is these young people that are going to be the change. They're going to really be able to take responsibility for connecting us again. They need to be taught how to do that. And if we just think about the past 5 years, even like shaking hands, making eye contact, connecting with folks that are ahead of us, that intimidate us a little bit, right? Those people that are 5 and 10 years ahead of us, they intimidate us often, especially as young people and early career professionals. So the connections in a disconnected world aren't just going to happen without us acknowledging it and pursuing it with intention and purpose and a sense of collaboration with others. No matter their age or stage or role or title, we need intention and purpose behind how we are coaching connections.
Yeah. Oh, coaching connections. That's good. Okay. I want you to speak before we get into some practical things, because I'm going to ask, give us some practical ways we can do that. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about our audience that's listening right now, the equestrian entrepreneur, that honestly, entrepreneurship can feel very lonely too, right? So they're again, getting onto social, trying to make these connections for the purpose of their business. But I was just talking to somebody the other day that was talking about just the lonely feeling of entrepreneurship. And yes, even in the equestrian world, right? So talk to me about the importance of that for entrepreneurs, even that are feeling that pain of, I'm kind of going through this alone. I'm the only one who's not making a sale. I'm the only one who's showing up to these live videos and people aren't joining me, or I'm the only one who's sending emails and not getting responses, or hanging up flyers and not getting the calls. Typically, right, when it's not going well is when we tend to feel alone for some reason. When things are going well, we don't necessarily feel so alone. But talk a little bit about that need for connection.
Yeah, without a doubt. And if I'm not a living example of that over the past 18 months, right? After 20
Yeah.
years in an industry career where it was even what I tell young people who are in college, this is the last opportunity you will have to have forced friendships. From here on out, as you become young adults, friendship becomes a little more challenging. So maybe if you think about it in that perspective, entrepreneurship is lonely. And being able to acknowledge that, oftentimes we aren't even able to comprehend it until we're living it and we're in it. And so those connections do become all that much more important, because let's face it, even as a professional equestrian, we are, as an industry, quite small, comparatively speaking. And we are also pretty cliquish. We can be, are we Western? Are we English? Are we hunter jumper? Are we eventing or dressage or Western pleasure? All of these. And to really decide that we are going to find a group, and I'll speak from the perspective of a female, that's who I am, right? Is we need other women. We have got to create a cohort or a tribe or a powerhouse of a mastermind where we are truly connecting with structure. And that structure could be some mentorship. It could be really championing one another. I think about it in the perspective of a Bible study, right? Any of us that have ever participated in a Bible study, it might be 4 or 5 women, or it might be 15, but there is an organization to it. You are meeting weekly. You have a particular agenda of whether you're reading through a book or working through a study, you might have a workbook. It really needs to look a little bit like that, because without that camaraderie that we can create and share our wins and our losses and level one another up, I think it's just so important. And I look at that as a mastermind. And I think that that is maybe a concept that we really need to bring into the equine and ag space that is a little bit more mainstream on a corporate perspective outside of our industry, where a mastermind truly is intended to level us up. It is a cohort of truly trusted advisors that you're able to share with. And that practice exists in a lot of ways, in a lot of places. So we need to bring it to ourselves as female entrepreneurs, especially. And I'm not saying it's not important for men. It is. But I do think that there is a lot of value in women championing other women. And if we are to create that, then we are empowered then maybe to get comfortable being uncomfortable, share our challenges in a safe place, and be connected with people who there's always going to be the people we spend our time with. Everyone knows someone that we don't know. And that could turn into the next opportunity, the next sale, whatever that looks like. So I do believe that we have to acknowledge it. And we are really quick to think we need to do life on our own and that we shouldn't be sharing our failures. We should absolutely. And this is coming from a place I'm preaching to myself right now, as much as I'm preaching to our audience, right? That women need women, people need people. So, find that group of, similar mindset and spend time with them on purpose with intention. Make the time. It's part of your day. It's part of your schedule.
That's so good. All right. You've already tiptoed into some of the practical things. For those listening that are saying, okay, Jodi, I believe you, but how the heck do I find that?
Yes.
Okay. I may be jumping into the water already, but I'm like, tell them, somebody send you a message. Look, I heard you say those things. I totally agree. I've been looking for that. I don't know what to do. What do you tell that person?
Well, Denise, where did you and I connect? LinkedIn, right? That's my first and foremost number one practical tip. I believe that LinkedIn, especially if you are an entrepreneur, you are an industry professional, and if you are not on LinkedIn, you are missing opportunities. You are missing connections that matter. And so I am very adamant that we are under leveraging the power of LinkedIn. It is not just another social network. It is truly a professional network that can be utilized and leveraged so much more effectively than all the other socials that we're spending entirely too much time on. And so for me, and I coach young people. I teach a class at the University of Kentucky. I teach an ag sales class. That's one of the responsibilities of my students, is to in a very organized and intentional way, establish their LinkedIn presence. If they're not doing that I believe it should be done their freshman year of college at the latest. And I'm getting these juniors and seniors who haven't done that yet. And it's missing opportunities. So LinkedIn, go and establish your LinkedIn presence. If you need help with that, I have a cheat sheet, a resource that can do it. And then you need to find people who are 5 and 10 years ahead of you doing the things you are interested in and working for organizations and brands that you are interested in. And then go a little farther, reach out to that person. So many of my podcast guests have come from random reach outs on LinkedIn. One of my dream jobs, my last dream job, came from a random reach out on LinkedIn. That's what it's for. And when we use that productively and positively, LinkedIn is my first go-to for practical advice on what to do. If you don't have a LinkedIn, go get one.
Okay. I'm not going to lie. I did not expect you to say that.
Yeah.
I did not expect that. And I'm going to guess, honestly, a lot of horse people are going, I didn't think she would say that either. So I'm so curious for those that are listening. If you have a LinkedIn profile, send me a message. I want to see it and make sure we're connected on LinkedIn, and we'll see.
Yes.
See what
Connect
people are
with
doing.
us.
Yeah.
And so there are, you can connect with veterinarians, you can connect with farriers, you can connect with industry professionals across the animal health and equine space. And it will, if you will put the time into it, you will find an opportunity you never dreamed of. You will find a connection that will create an opportunity you never dreamed of.
Okay. All right. I can't wait to hear what people are going to do after they hear that and the action they're going to
Yeah.
take. So good. All right. So give us some other very practical things that equestrian entrepreneurs can do to really make intentional connections.
Yes. Well, you use the word probably for my number two advice, and we alluded to this, Denise, but intentional menteeship. So I did not say mentorship. I said menteeship. And I believe that the responsibility there that word brings is it's yours to own. And
Mm.
so, as I mentioned with LinkedIn, the practice of finding people who are at least 5 years ahead of that. I do that on purpose because, again, our comfort zone is to be with our peers. It's to be with the people that we already know, the people at our barn or the people that are in and around our high school or college peer group. But when we start to look, and LinkedIn helps with this, when we start to look for those folks who are at least 5, if not 10 years ahead of us, doing things we're interested in doing and working places we're interested in learning more about, we are forced, without even most of the time acknowledging it, to be a little better, right? To speak a little bit more articulately, to stand a little taller, to become better people. We tend to listen to them and take heed on the things that they say and the advice that they provide and the coaching that they provide. So mentorship and menteeship might be really kind of overused, but there are resources out there that basically establish a little bit of a contract, right? We are going to meet on a monthly basis. We are going to meet via Zoom. We're going to meet at a coffee house. And it's my responsibility as a mentee to really manage that relationship, to set those appointments, to confirm those appointments, to be ready with questions. Do I want to bring my resume for this person to review? Do I want to bring a list of or share with them via email 2 or 3 jobs that or opportunities that I'm looking at and get their feedback on that? Be very intentional about becoming a mentee in order to learn. And I think that very quickly too, you can become a mentor. There are other people around that, are looking at you the same way that you are looking at others. But I really want to say that my number two piece of advice behind LinkedIn is become a mentee with purpose and intention.
Okay, that's so good. And so do you see those as like you said, it has an ending point. So it's like we're going to meet for a certain number of times and we have a purpose behind it, or it's more like a hey, so tell me I'm sure you have some strong feedback on this, honestly, just from hearing you talk. If I send a message to someone, hey, can we meet for coffee? I'd love to just ask you a few questions, right? That's super informal.
Correct.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that versus the very formal mentorship, menteeship setup?
Yeah. So I think that formal comes after an informal, right? Where we meet with someone and I encourage, my coaching clients, I encourage everyone to be reaching out on a regular basis. What are you comfortable with? Can you make a new connection once a week, once a month, whatever that looks like? Yes, make those connections. From that effort, you will normally find the people that you are really interested in and feel connected to as perhaps a mentee. And then you have to ask them if they have that kind of time and are willing to make that commitment to you. And I would encourage, Denise, as you get to that point, that it be at least 3 months. I really think that 90 days provides a time frame that allows action, a time frame that allows you to grow, to do some homework in between, to create some new connections. And then when you do put that definitive time frame on it, when you get to the end, you may decide, okay, I want to do this again. I want to continue with this relationship. Or you might decide this was great and send them a thank you and give them a little gift, whatever that looks like. And then maybe there's someone else that you want to do the same thing with.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to add another follow-up question for you to speak into. When someone's saying, Okay, we're not even going to talk about the issue of time because I do want you to address that because I think it's more of a mindset than a time issue. And I think we would both agree on that one. But when somebody's saying, okay, I'm building a horse business, right? It's a boarding barn and we're doing lessons. And so do I look for somebody who's doing the exact same thing that I'm doing, but further along? Or do I just look for somebody who's doing what I want to perfect or do better at? So, for example, I want to do better with my online marketing presence since this is a marketing podcast. So I'm going to look for somebody who's doing that well, even if they don't have the same business model as me, but I can learn from them specifically. What would you say to that?
Yeah, such a great question. I would encourage you to find the people that are demonstrating the standard of excellence you are seeking. It does not matter what they're doing, right? But if they have that it factor that draws you to them, that you're like, oh my gosh, like that, like they're really doing awesome things, that's the person you want to be aligned to and learn from. And so I would be much quicker to encourage you to find that person that, yes, if you want to develop your skills as a marketer or you want to develop your skills, most often we are all competent horse people that struggle on the business aspect in some way. Go find someone who is really doing the business side of this well and learn something from them.
Yeah, so good. Okay, we camped out on that one a while. Is there anything else you want to say about that before I move you to the next one?
Let's go.
Okay, beautiful. All right, so we have get on LinkedIn, we have be a mentee, and what was the next one?
So the next one for me is curiosity. It's one of my favorite words. And the way that I want to really share being curious, because, we say, go be curious. Okay, that's awesome. It's kind of a fun word to say, but I want you first to be curious about you. And so I'm a huge fan of the behavioral type assessments that give us insights into who we are. And I don't think we're doing enough of that in our industry. So, for instance, I am certified as a DISC facilitator. So, that's a certain behavioral assessment that allows me to learn more and more about myself as well as how I interact with others. And I believe it's one of the most simple and science backed assessments that we can take and utilize as a professional. There's Clifton Strengths. Now, the newer ones that are out there, Enneagram, Working Genius, take your pick, but pursue growth and development. And I think that really comes down to understanding that if I become more curious about myself and being more versatile as a human being, more impactful, more listening, more understanding of others, then I automatically become a little bit more curious about others. And by being curious about other people, I am less judgmental and more collaborative. The world needs less judgmental and more collaborative. And that starts with curiosity rather than judgment.
That's so good. Like I'm digesting that before I even respond because I'm like so much good stuff in there. I've been learning this personally as well, and it has been. And let me just say this because we have so many different types of people that are listening, but my listeners know that I'm a perfectionist and I've been learning so much about that in the growth process. And also what I've learned about that idea of being curious. So when I would take an assessment, the Enneagram, for example, I was actually really mad about my number because I was like, this is not the good number that I needed, and my counselor was like, that's a typical response from a one, like, cause I'm one. And he was like, but what I learned was that the point of the assessment was not to tell me what's good or bad, which is what I had to learn about myself, right? That I see so many things as right or wrong, good or bad. And the purpose of the assessment was just to understand myself better and then be able to process things and learn so much from that. So for those that are listening that are either saying, I don't like those because they tell me the things I don't like about myself, let me just encourage you that that's actually not what it's for. And for those of you who have said, I don't have time or I'm not interested or I'm not, especially for an entrepreneur, you have to make the choice to do those things. When you work somewhere, like I've worked at jobs where that was the requirement. We had to take this assessment either upon being hired, even in the application process. But as an entrepreneur, this is on you. Nobody's going to make you take these assessments or do whatever it is to learn more about yourself and understand more about yourself. But as you do, the way it will stretch you in your business really is profound.
Yes, without a doubt, it makes you more effective. Number one goal for me is I want to be a better Jodi today than I was yesterday. So it's a constant work, right? And we're always going to, if we're these, many of us, type A personalities, perfectionist tendencies, we're never good enough. And the world is out here telling us we need to be more, do more, be stronger, be prettier, be skinnier, whatever. Like, no, just stop. But when we do understand ourselves from a fundamental perspective and what our tendencies are, I'm an Enneagram 3. So, like, across the board, no matter the assessment I take, you're going to see like high achieving. And, like that comes with a lot of guilt. That's the side effect of being an achiever is guilt of never being enough. And,
Yeah.
but to your point, we have to acknowledge those things. And if we acknowledge it, if we come back to it, if we use it when we are applying for jobs or meeting with new people and seeking new opportunities, if we continue to come back and digest some of that information as what motivates me, what stresses me, what brings out the best in me, that's the purpose of it. It is to make us more effective, more productive, more satisfied. Like I'm seeking satisfaction rather than success. Think about that one, right? How do we achieve satisfaction versus success? That's the point of those exercises. And it's even more powerful when you share it with other people. So go do it with your mastermind or your cohort or your tribe, whatever that is. Go do it with them and then talk about it and come back and talk about it 2 or 3 times a year again in a different way. So I'll get off that soapbox, but I can get on that soapbox. Like, yep, I can get on that soapbox, Denise.
Yeah. Well, because you've seen the power of it. Like, right.
Yeah.
And those soapboxes we're on is because we're like, I've seen this. I want you to understand it. I want you to see what's possible. So I think you're just saying, yeah, I've seen the power of that. So let me encourage you to go out and do that. Yeah.
Yes.
So good. And then to understand that it seems counterintuitive, what you said, be curious about yourself and that's going to build connections. But man, can I see how that would happen? Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, friend, what do we have next? I'm loving this.
Okay, so we went through, I think, the LinkedIn and the menteeship and curiosity. And I'll finish by saying, I think that we need to remind ourselves the power of service. So I really am big on serving others. The acronym for my business, Jodi Speaks Life, life is living, inspired, fulfilled, and empowered. And so I believe that inspiration comes from loving other people. And we all know how to do that. We just have to take the time to do it. And then fulfillment really comes from serving other people. And maybe we've gotten away from that. That was a little bit more of a baby boomer or beyond, attitude towards life that we do service. You see so many of the organizations now that are, paying for volunteer days. They're not making you take PTO if you want to serve organizations. Go out in your community and volunteer. And I think that's another one of those. We could do a whole nother episode on time, right? Because you alluded to that. But the time that we dedicate to serving other people is so important in our own fulfillment in who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do. So whether that's service by mentorship, whether that is service by serving your church or you're serving some organization or some group of people, your community, whatever. I believe that if we come back to a little bit of a service mindedness, we're going to see the power of those kinds of connections that feeds us, right? And that's really important to feed our soul. The disconnection that we are living through is, really feeding a lot of negativity, burnout, crisis, shortage, all those things. I believe that service, is one way to really kind of bring that back into our hearts and souls.
That's really good. And let me just too say for those listening that are, saying, well, I don't have a day I can give up in the summer. I'm literally outside doing horse, shows and training. Like my instructor, she's like never home right now. Right.
Yeah.
But service doesn't have to mean formal, like a formal volunteer day, right? Yeah. Like that idea of if the whole reason is building those connections, then I am sure there are ways that you probably are already serving and not even realizing it or calling it that are actually building connections. Or if you're feeling lonely, serving is a great way to what's the right word? I don't want to take away those lonely feelings, but frankly, replace them. You know what I mean? Right. Like it will replace the loneliness when you get out there and make those connections by serving people. It really is interesting. I will try to link to this in the podcast notes, but I listened to a podcast with Tim Tebow once. And funnily enough, I did an interview earlier this week and I mentioned to the same podcast, but a different thing I had learned from him. He was saying that he was actually upset. There was a specific instance where he was like super angry and upset, right? He's super competitive. He had lost something. It was super important. Understandable. But he was like, I didn't like who I became. And so I told somebody, like, is anytime I have a big loss, I want you to call me and we're going to go straight to serving somewhere. Like that was his antidote. That's the word I was looking for. The antidote to
Yes.
loneliness, the antidote to that feeling of feeling. He was like, I made it all about me in one game. And he was like, if I can get outside of myself and go serve, then I'm reminded of what's really important. And to our point here, you make connections and it is the antidote to that lonely feeling for sure.
It is. That's such a great reference. I read his book in 2023. And again, I think just a super impactful role model and understanding of the impact of service. Because to your point, I will often say we talk so much about burnout now, and burnout and loneliness very, very much linked, right? And
Yeah.
I will use the term antidote, the antidote to burnout. The only antidote, the top antidote, number one is rewarding and meaningful connections. That's how we battle burnout and loneliness and depression, is rewarding and meaningful connections. And I don't want to diminish the realness, the reality, the intensity of burnout, loneliness, and depression. I'm not, but I do believe that as we start to come together in collaboration and connection, those are the things that really help us help each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Meaningful connections. I love that. And that's such a great ending to this because we're talking about connecting in a disconnected world. And it is not just those comments on social media that count. You know what I mean? That is not, even though Facebook might call those meaningful conversations, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about at least face to face, or I'll be honest, I have a friend, we voice memo a ton. And we don't get to be face to face, but we have a lot of meaningful conversations via voice memo and we're super authentic and real. So it doesn't always have to be face to face, but it does need to be meaningful to be powerful and impactful. Absolutely.
Yes. Amen to that for sure. I'm a huge fan of in-person connections, but you're right. While we need to continue to re-encourage face-to-face connections and looking up, chin up, thumbs down, as I like to say, like, where's your device? Put it away. So chin up, thumbs down, and make some of that eye contact and actual human connection. But you're right. Like, have conversations, no matter if they're virtual or phone or voice memo, and be present. Be present.
Yeah. So good. Okay. What is there anything else? We have covered so many things, but I always like to ask an open-ended question of you're like, oh, I wish I would have mentioned this. Or if you want to talk about the time issue, we can. But is there anything else that you think equestrian entrepreneurs really should know and understand about the importance or the how-to of making connections?
Well, I will, Denise, take the opportunity just to finish on the time, because I think I have a good friend of mine who provided this wisdom that in my mind was pretty life-changing. And we all have the same amount of hours in every day. And if you split that 24 hours into 3/8 and you manage it accordingly, you've got 8 hours that should be rest and sleep. You've got 8 hours that belong to the work that you do, and you've got 8 hours that are yours personally. How are you spending them? And when you break it down that way and really begin to understand, I'll be the first to say many of us need to pay attention to the screen time, and we've got to start to put it down a little bit more and be present. But when you break that 16 hours down that we have, and 8 of that at least thereabouts goes into the work that we do, what we do. But 8 hours is who we are. It's your family and your health and your friends and your hobbies and all of those things. And for some of us, especially on the equine side, those are very much married. But if you really start to kind of own your time with that purpose of, it's mine, who am I, what do I do, and why do I do what I do, then we're truly kind of owning our time. And we are, inspired, fulfilled, and empowered. As I said, inspired,
Yeah.
fulfilled, and empowered is the goal.
Yeah. I love it. And that's the thing, having that goal, having that why behind it, it drives it all home. we can talk about that as a whole episode too. Yeah. Having a strong why. I talk about that often. It's so important to drive everything else home. So good. Jodi, thank you so much. I'm so pumped. I'm so excited for my listeners to get to hear this and take action. And to be honest, probably listen a second time or a third time because there's so many nuggets that they're going to want to pull out. But before we go, would you tell them where they can find you? Of course, I'll have your links and all the things in the show notes. But for those who are listening and pulling out their phone and saying, all right, let me find her on Instagram, LinkedIn, tell us where they can find you.
Yes, LinkedIn is always first. So LinkedIn, find me, Jodi Lynch Findley, and it's Jodi and LynchFindley. My website, www.jodispeakslife.com. And then I am on Facebook and Instagram. But again, our listeners have heard that I will send you to LinkedIn primarily.
Yeah, perfect. And then the podcast, of course. I'll make sure to link to the podcast too.
Yes. The Thriving Equine Professional, where I publish weekly.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much, Jodi. What a gift of time. Thank you for sharing your insights, your experience. I know it's going to bless so many.
Thank you so much, Denise. It was a blessing in my day and my week. So I'm so excited to be here, and we will continue to be connected and share life.
Absolutely. All right, friends, I told you this was your homework. I want you to determine what is the one thing you're going to do from this conversation that's going to help you build connections for yourself and for your business starting today. What I want you to do is send me a message or shoot me an email anytime, denise@stormlily.com. Or you can even screenshot this podcast episode on your phone, share it on social, and tag myself and Jodi. And let us know, what was your takeaway? What's the thing that you are going to start doing? Maybe you're going to explore LinkedIn. Maybe you're going to look into a formal menteeship or somebody that you can learn from. Or maybe you're going to start serving somewhere. I want to hear about it, because here's the thing. As I said in the intro, your success is not going to happen in a silo. It's going to come because of the connections that you're going to build over time. The connections with your customers, the connections potentially with your suppliers, the connections with your competitors, maybe. All of those things are going to matter, and they're going to help you to build your business. All right, before I let you go, friends, there's one thing I want to talk to you about. One of the best ways that you're going to build connections online with your potential customers is through your email list. Yes, social media, I talk about it as great for connections, but you don't own that. So remember, you own your email list. And so I want to encourage you today, as a part of your action steps, if you have not yet grabbed my free beginner's guide to email marketing for horse businesses, then go and get that today. You can head to stormlily.com/email guide, and it will be right there for you. Or you can go to the show notes at stormlily.com/141 for episode 141. I'll have the highlights of today's conversation, and then I will have the link to this free guide. Because the reality is, when you are marketing your horse business, if you are not using email marketing as a part of your strategy, you are missing out. And I promise you, no matter the discipline, no matter the size of your list, no matter the niche or the area of the equestrian world that you are working in, email marketing can work for you. So head to stormlily.com/email guide. I'm going to help you learn how to begin to grow your email list. And then you're also going to plan out what goes inside of your email newsletter, how often you're going to send it, and really make a plan for your email marketing strategy. It is doable, I promise. Even if you do it once a month, it will bring fruit. Okay, thanks so much for joining me here today. I hope you loved this conversation with Jodi as much as I did. Go find her on social media. Thank her for being a guest and sharing her insights, and continue to join me here on the podcast. I'll continue to bring you new friends and guests as we dive into practical, actionable ways that you can market your horse business. Have an awesome day.